Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, FY 2023 Second Chance Act Training and Technical Assistance Program, hosted by the Bureau of Justice Assistance. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Heather Tubman-Carbone, Associate Deputy Director with the Bureau of Justice Assistance, to begin the presentation. Heather.
Thanks, Daryl. Good morning, all, and thank you so much for joining us. We are thrilled to bring this opportunity to the field. We've got a lot of information today, so you won't just hear from me. I am joined by Andre Bethia, Senior Policy Advisor, and Tasha Akins and Meg Chapman, Policy Advisors at BJA. Andre oversees the National Reentry Resource Center and the education and employment work, so you'll hear from him about those, among others. Tasha leads the corrections and community engagement work, so you'll hear from her on those topics. And Meg is the lead on behavioral health, so you'll hear from her on that, as well as some other application suggestions. So let's dig in. Today, we are going to cover, as I said, a number of things. We've got a lot of information for you. First up, we'll start with an introduction of who OJP is and how BJA sits within OJP. I'll provide a program overview for the solicitation and talk about the general goals, objectives, and deliverables. We'll then hand off to Andre, Meg, and Tasha to talk through the goals, objectives, and deliverables that are specific to each section or each category in the solicitation. We'll also cover eligibility and application requirements. We'll talk about application resources to guide you as you prepare your application and submit it. And we will leave some time for Q&A at the end. So first, what is the Office of Justice Programs? The Office of Justice Programs, also known as OJP, provides grant funding, training, research, and statistics to the criminal justice community. We are one of 3 grant-making components of the Department of Justice. Next slide. BJA in particular was created in 1984 to reduce violent crime, create safer communities, and reform our nation's criminal justice system. BJA strengthens the nation's justice system and helps America's state, local, and tribal jurisdictions reduce and prevent crime, reduce recidivism, and promote a fair and safe criminal justice system. We focus our programmatic and policy efforts on a wide range of resources, including training and technical assistance to law enforcement, courts, corrections, treatment, reentry, justice information sharing, and community-based partners to address chronic and emerging criminal justice challenges nationwide. And we do this in 4 ways. We fund, educate, equip, and partner. With this solicitation, one could argue we are doing all 4 of these. So the Second Chance Act puts out grant funding to state, local, tribal, and community-based entities across the nation every year. This solicitation is for training and technical assistance to support them. So with this solicitation, we are providing funding to many training and technical assistance providers to provide education, to equip the field with tools, and to serve as a thought partner with us and with jurisdictions and community-based organizations across the country. So before we dig in, a question for everyone. Has your organization been awarded federal grants in the past? Your response options are, and you should see the poll up on your screen, you can vote. Yes, my organization has extensive experience with federal grants. Yes, though my organization does not currently have any federal grants. My organization has limited experience with federal grants. Or my organization is brand new to federal grants and looking to learn more. So please take a moment and respond. All right, if we could close the poll, let's see what we've got. Maybe I suggested closing the poll too early. It looks like about half of the folks on the line did not answer. Of those who, about a quarter who answered, or about a quarter of the folks on the line have extensive experience, and about 15% are new to federal grants. So I think we really, and there's some in between as well, so we really run the gamut here. So please, as we go through, don't hesitate to pop any questions you have in the Q&A section. We will save time for them at the end, but don't feel like you have to wait until the very end to put those in there. All right, so first let's start with a program overview. There's a lot going on with this one. So first, a quick note about the Second Chance Act. The Second Chance Act funding helps jurisdictions to develop, implement, and test strategies to assist youth and adults as they transition out of detention and incarceration and re-enter their community. BJA administers Second Chance Act funding in 3 ways. We make grants, as I mentioned, grants to state, local, tribal, and community-based entities. We support training and technical assistance to support those grantees as well as to advance the field at large. And we also support the National Reentry Resource Center, which serves as a clearinghouse for the field of information related to reentry, as well as serving as a coordinator and convener of the grantees and technical assistance providers. The grants are competed separately. So you can see on your screen now that we award grants directly to state, local governments, federally recognized Indian tribes, and nonprofit organizations through the separate solicitations listed on your screen. And you can see that those are able to be organized into categories that align with our solicitation categories, like corrections and community engagement, education and employment, and behavioral health. This particular solicitation is competing with training and technical assistance. There are 4 categories. First is the National Reentry Resource Center. Second is corrections and community engagement. Third is health and housing. And fourth is education and employment. So these categories represent 4 distinct awards. In each of these categories, we anticipate making 1 award. All of those awards will run for 36 months. They are, however, for different amounts. So category 1, the National Reentry Resource Center, will be 1 award for 36 months for up to $3 million. Category 2, for corrections and community engagement, also 1 award, 36 months, but up to $2 million. Category 3, health and housing, same number, 1 award, same amount of time, $2.75 million. Category 4, education and employment, $2 million. These amounts are based on these award amounts are based on the amount of work that we are asking to be done in each category. So that takes into consideration, for example, the number of site-based grantees that the TA provider will be supporting, as well as the additional work that we anticipate to support the field at large. And proposals should reflect that. So a little bit more about each. For category 1, the National Reentry Resource Center is a clearinghouse to criminal justice practitioners, stakeholders, and grantees. The NRRC, as we call it, serves as a coordinator and convener of the grantees and RTE providers, while also maintaining a website that provides resources to the field. For each of the other 3 categories, we're looking for a provider to support grantees who receive those site-based awards, and applicants may apply to more than 1 category. So anybody who's tuning in today, you are absolutely welcome to apply for 1 category, 2 categories, 3, or even 4 categories. Please keep in mind that for each category you are interested in, you must submit a separate application. The general purpose of those 3 categories, categories 2, 3, and 4, is to support grantees to accomplish their specific grant-funded projects by providing subject matter and project management expertise. What that means is grantees are submitting their own proposals. Sorry, I was going to say solicitations. They are responding to solicitations with their own proposals, with their own projects that are based on the problems and challenges that they see in their jurisdiction and their solutions to address those. The role of the TA provider is to both help those grantees accomplish their specific goals, as we have funded them, but also to support the field at large. That includes responding to ad hoc requests, that also includes developing topical tools and resources to advance knowledge, policy, and practice. At BJA, we generally refer to this sort of 2-pronged approach to TA as grantee work and policy work, because your goal is to advance the grantees to accomplish their goals, as well as to advance the field at large. TA can take many forms, and it will take many forms. So some examples of TA delivery are virtual and on-site consultation, webinars, publications, peer learning, developing communities of practice, producing customized resources, facilitation, training and national conferences, and policy academies. To that end, applicants should propose activities that will take any of these forms in order to accomplish the specific goals of your category. And there are some expectations around training and technical assistance, so I want to take a moment to go through these. These are pretty important to BJA. First, BJA expects that all TE providers will deliver individualized, efficient, and consistent training and technical assistance. For Second Chance Act grantees, that includes developing tailored TA plans with the grantees. So again, BJA is funding grantees to pursue their individually proposed projects, and training and technical assistance providers are here to help them, in part, to help them meet those goals. So you would develop a tailored TA plan with those grantees. Assist the grantees in completing a planning and implementation guide. That's a requirement of the grantees that is in the solicitations they are competing for. Assign a qualified coach to each grantee and hold monthly virtual check-ins. This one's also pretty important. I mean, all of these are important, but this one in particular is how you establish your ongoing communication with the grantees. We expect there to be one individual who is assigned to each grantee. You may have one coach who works full-time and serves all the grantees in a particular program, depending on the number, or you may have multiple coaches who serve the grantees within a particular program or across programs. But the goal is to have a coach that each grantee knows they can turn to and that they get comfortable with. We also expect that training and technical assistance providers will anticipate, quickly identify, and address challenges that grantees are facing. One of the goals of that monthly check-in is to create the rapport, to create the relationship so that the TA provider can anticipate, identify, and address challenges. In this vein, we also expect TA providers to have sufficient subject matter expertise to assist grantees. So, for example, if you are applying to Category 4 for education and employment, it is expected that the staff who are proposed to work on this project have expertise and experience in those areas, as opposed to, for example, behavioral health. That would be a different category. BJA also expects that you will utilize a range of local and national subject matter experts and advise grantees on their evaluation activities. To the extent that evaluations are being performed by the grantees as part of their grant-funded projects, we expect the TA providers to support them in those efforts. We also ask TA providers to collaborate and coordinate with local jurisdictions, federal partners, and interest groups. One aspect of coaching a grantee is to appreciate the landscape that they're working in, and that often means getting to know people and places in that environment. We also expect TA providers to respond to ad hoc requests from the field, from practitioners. And in doing so, we expect you to prioritize unfunded applicants, meaning the TA doesn't go just to the grantees. Just a few more expectations. One thing that BJA values in particular from these TA providers is being a thought leader and a thought partner. The cooperative agreement holders selected through the solicitation are our partners, are our ears and eyes on the ground, and we expect you to be a partner to us in thinking about what the field needs, getting those resources out there, convening the grantees, and advancing the field. We also expect TA providers to build the knowledge of the field and to build capacity in their categories subject through presence at national meetings and conferences. Meaning, for example, if you are the training and technical assistance provider for the corrections and community engagement work, we would expect there to be a presence at the American Correctional Association or Correctional Leaders Association conferences to engage the leaders in that field. This also includes coordinating TA activities with BJA and other OJP offices, assisting grantees in the collection of their performance measure data, and tailoring TA strategies to meet the emerging needs of grantees and reporting performance trends. Lastly, we expect TA providers to maintain a listserv and to participate in GrantStat and mini-GrantStat if requested. GrantStat and mini-GrantStat are really sort of like stock-taking efforts that BJA goes through every few years just to understand better what's going on in a particular grant program, what are the needs of the field, and what might we do better to meet those. So next up, I am going to hand off to Andre Bethia, Senior Policy Advisor, to talk about the goals, objectives, and deliverables for each category, to at least kick us off. I know we've got a number of categories. So Andre, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Heather. And again, thank you everyone for joining us for the Second Chance Act fiscal year 2023 Second Chance Act Training and Technical Assistance Program. So Again, we have a great deal to cover. My colleagues and I are ready to get to the Q&A, so let's jump in. Specifically on Category 1, which is the National Reentry Resource Center, or as we love to call it, just simply NRRC. So here the goals are really to advance knowledge and practice of the reentry field. That means everything from ocean to ocean, and including our territories, as well as the states that are not on the continental 48. That is the expectation. So identify and promote evidence-based practices, support innovation, serve as a centralized coordinator of Second Chance Act training and technical assistance providers and grantees, as well as educate the field. Jumping into the objectives for the NRRC, you're to serve as a centralized online location for reentry information, not just information from the DOJ, but reentry information from our various federal partners. Provide education and other resources. Translate products and initiatives of BJA, Second Chance Act TTA providers, as well as the federal interagency initiatives to the field. So what does this look like when we coordinate across the Second Chance Act TTA providers? Well, the provider for the National Reentry Resource Center would develop a communication strategy, collect, distribute, and maintain project-specific communication and other relevant information. Coordinate quarterly conference calls amongst the providers in the National Reentry Resource Center. Establish protocol for collecting performance measures from the Second Chance Act grantees. Build communities of practice. That's how we learn. That's how we help others glean something from other jurisdictions or similar jurisdictions. Ensure projects are planned and implemented to avoid overlap and duplication. Assist in editing all Second Chance Act TTA reports and publications, as well as coordinate with BJA's own National Training and Technical Assistance Center as related reentry projects come up through the field. So some of the deliverables for the NRRC, initially the first one, as Heather mentioned earlier, serve as a thought leader, trainer, and information clearinghouse. That is to create and disseminate knowledge diffusion products, disseminate best practices and lessons learned, present at conferences and events, facilitate and provide reentry resources for people who have been exonerated by BJ-funded efforts and others, maintain and enhance the NRRC website, that's a huge one, maintain reentry clearing houses, which are the National Inventory of Collateral Consequences of Conviction, as well as the National Clean Slate Clearinghouse, strengthen the network of state reentry coordinators, convene a state reentry coordinators college, identify promising practices, promising programs, and practices for crimesolutions.gov, develop lessons learned materials on implementation and evaluation of reentry initiatives. A huge one, plan annual in-person National Reentry Conference. Collaborate with other BJA and SBA TTA providers. That means provide support on federal initiatives, including implementation of federal policy changes, support research practitioner partnerships, and provide support to and coordinate with another BJA-sponsored cooperative agreement known as Reentry 2030. And now I believe I'm passing it on to my colleague, Tasha Akins. Tasha?
Great. And thanks again to everyone for joining us today. The goal of the Corrections and Community Engagement is to serve as the training and technical assistance provider to Second Chance Act grantees for programs and advance the field at large on related topics. Those topics are smart reentry, expanding jail programs and services, community-based reentry, community-based reentry incubator initiative. The objectives for corrections is to work with BJA to develop and provide tools, training, and resources aimed at helping jails and prisons and their correctional leadership, agency supervisors and staff implement proposed projects, make decisions and allocate resources, operate and scale programs, and manage individuals and reentry processes with the goal of reducing recidivism. This includes testing and developing strategies to identify people at high risk for violent recidivism and referring to supervision and community-based violence intervention initiatives as appropriate. The objectives for the community engagement portion is to work with BJA to develop and provide tools, training, and resources aimed at helping community-based organizations to engage with departments of corrections and local justice partners, as well as implement or expand evidence-based programs with the goal of reducing recidivism. Provide community-based organizations with tailored resources and tips for partnering with correctional agencies on reentry grants, including strategies for leveraging organizational expertise to meet the needs of underserved and historically marginalized and underserved communities. Next, I will pass it on to my colleague, Meg Chapman. Meg, you have the floor. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining, and thank you, Tasha. So as of Category 2, applications in this category, or applicants in this category, should be prepared to support grantees awarded through specific grant programs and then the field at large on related topics, in this case, health and housing. There are 5 grant programs that will be supported under this category. The first 3, improve reentry for adults with co-occurring substance use and mental health disorders, adult reentry education, employment, treatment, and recovery program. And in this case, it's just the group of grantees focusing on treatment and improving substance use disorder treatment and recovery outcomes for adults in reentry, focus on supporting grantees that are working to establish or expand system approaches that improve outcomes for adults with substance use disorders who are reentering the community. And the 4th program is improving adult and youth crisis stabilization and community reentry programs that support the provision of clinical and recovery support services in the community. And then the final grant program under this category is the Pay for Success initiative, which supports performance-based and outcome-based programming that ties to payment for services to reaching agreed-upon goals. So you can review these solicitations on BJA's website. And Heather already went through the expectations related to, or BJA's expectations related to TA earlier. Next slide. On this slide and the next slide, we're just going to identify our objectives for the policy work to support the field at large. The first objective is related to health service financing. We're looking for the TA provider to have the expertise to provide technical assistance to states and facilities that, through expanded state Medicaid plans, are able to be reimbursed for Medicaid-eligible services provided to approved Medicaid-eligible individuals for some period prior to release. We're also looking for the TA provider to support the field to increase adoption of evidence-based practices to improve access to health services and treatment for people both pre-release and in reentry with both substance use and co-occurring mental health disorders. Next slide. And we're also looking for the TA provider under this category to be able to address the challenges that people in reentry face in securing stable, affordable housing. And this might, for example, include identifying or elevating model programs in the community. Lastly, applications should have the capacity to support corrections and partners in the translation of knowledge about the value of family connections and support into expanded opportunities for adults to maintain, establish, or otherwise address connections and improve family engagement and reintegration post-release. I'm going to pass it back to Andre.
Thanks, Meg. And I'm going to cover Category 4, and then we're going to go into other necessary areas of information for this entire cooperative agreement and for this entire solicitation webinar. So, all right, Category 4, Education and Employment, Training and Technical Assistance. So the goal here is to serve as the TTA provider for Second Chance Act grantees for the following programs and advance the field at large on related topics like adult reentry and employment strategic planning and implementation programs, the comprehensive adult reentry education and employment to reduce recidivism strategies program, careers, improving reentry education and employment outcome program. And some of the objectives, whether under education, would be improve correctional education, prepare adults for meaningful careers, and increase their employability. This also includes the BJA Department of Ed-led Second Chance Pell experiments and subsequent Pell reinstatement that's occurring in July 2023. For employment, increasing the number of individuals who are work-ready and improving fair chance hiring practices. Next slide. So now for categories 2 through 4, that's the TTA provider areas, we want to talk about some of the deliverables for those specific categories. Again, this is for categories 2 through 4. Provide knowledge, resources, and project management guidance to all BJA awarded Second Chance Act grantees to meet their objectives and deliverables. This is to identify and maintain a list of TTA consultants and subject matter experts, assign a consultant subject matter expert to each grantee, host orientation and field-wide webinars to market new funding opportunities. Also to assist grantees as they complete their grant activities and align operations with evidence-based best practices, develop the mandatory action plan, develop individualized TTA plans for each grantee, build capacity for data collection with the grantees, disseminate information and updates about their project within their organization, helping the grantees achieve that. Assess grantees' performance and provide coaching. Collect and report on performance measures and identify/explain trends. Interpret quarterly data grantees submit into BJ's performance management tool, identify those trends and TTA needs, as well as recommend adjustments to the TTA strategy. Use a dashboard to capture the TTA contacts and progress. Participate in grant performance reviews. Again, part of the deliverables for categories 2 through 4 include collaborate and coordinate with the National Reentry Resource Center's provider, provide subject matter expertise to and collaborate with the NRRC, as well as other Second Chance Act TTA providers on reentry events and conferences. Collaborate with the National Institute of Justice, grantee evaluating second chance implementation. Among the deliverables include propose and conduct activities that advance the requirements under each category. That is, develop research agendas, synthesize research, develop practical tools, fact sheets, infographics, and videos, animations included. Develop curricula, convene focus groups, listening sessions, expert panels, etc. Develop marketing and communications plan. So now we're going to jump into section 4, which speaks to the eligibility and application requirements. So let's start that part. Next slide. Who are the eligible applicants for any of the categories within this Second Chance Act training and technical assistance program? Well, they include for-profit organizations other than small businesses, nonprofits having a 501c3 status with the IRS, nonprofits that do not have a 501c3 status with the IRS, private institutions of higher education, public and state-controlled institutions of higher education. BJA will consider applications under which 2 or more entities will carry out the federal award. However, only one entity may be the applicant. Any others must be proposed as subrecipients, also known as subgrantees. An entity may be proposed as a subrecipient in more than one application. BJA will accept an application submitted on behalf of a consortium of providers or entities. BJA may elect to fund applications submitted under this fiscal year 2023 solicitation and in future fiscal years. So now let's get into application requirements. So for budget, propose project plans for the full period of performance, which is 36 months, and a budget that assumes level funding for each year of the award. Please note, the award amount in this solicitation is for 1 year. Pending performance and available funds, BJA will look to supplement these awards in future years. Spend half of the budget on TTA to the grantees, and then the other half on TTA as policy measures to the field. This solicitation does not require a match. That means don't put one in there. Applicants proposing to utilize grant funds to support technological enhancements must develop a digital trust implementation plan that describes how the applicant will communicate the use of this technology with the applicant's employees and the community at large. OJP strongly encourages every applicant that proposes to use award funds for any conference, meeting, or training-related activity to review carefully the OJP and DOJ policy and guidance on approval, planning, and reporting of such events. So let's just go through the application requirement checklist, and I'm just going to briefly run through these. This is just some of the content of the application submission. Earlier in the poll, seems like a portion of the attendees on this webinar are familiar with this, or with BJA funding, or federal funding at least, so let's run through it. There's the application for federal assistance, which is the SF-424, the mandated piece of a proposal abstract, right? Another mandated piece being the proposal narrative, the budget worksheet and narrative timeline, which is all in one now, right? That's mandated. Resumes of key personnel, again, a very mandated piece. Work product examples. A large part of this work is national work, so we expect that applicants will have work product examples. Any MOUs, Memorandum of Understandings, and other supportive documents, if applicable. Documentation of proposed subrecipients and procurement contracts. We mentioned subject matter experts a great deal in here, so there should be a documentation of proposed subrecipients and procurement contracts. Letters of support, indirect cost rate agreement, if applicable. Financial management and system of internal controls questionnaire. Disclosures and assurances. Research and evaluation, independence and integrity. Request and justification for employee compensation / waiver, if applicable. So now we're going to jump into the review criteria. So for the description of the issue, it's pretty much laid out in the solicitation what we need, so that's about 5%. More importantly is your project design and implementation, where you tell us how you're going to achieve that. That's 40%. The capabilities and competencies come in at 30%. A plan for collecting data for performance measures, again, 5%. And lastly, the budget coming in at 20%. That breaks up 100% for the review criteria. Now we're getting into how to apply. Well, the first thing we need to make sure is that your SAM registration is up to date. So what is SAM? That's your System for Award Management. You must renew and validate your registration every 12 months. If you do not renew your SAM registration, it will expire. An expired registration can delay and even prevent an application submission in grants.gov, as well as just grants. Registration and renewal can take up to 10 business days to complete, so please don't wait till the last day of the deadline to try to make that attempt. You might want to do that first. Gentle reminder, there's now a two-step application process. Step 1, grants.gov. After registering with SAM, you must submit the SF-424 as well as the SF-LLL in grants.gov as early as possible but no later than 48 hours before the grants.gov deadline. The grants.gov deadline for the Second Chance Act Training and Technical Assistance Program is July 25, 2023 at 8:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Step 2 is just grants. So you'll submit the full application, including all attachments, at the Just Grants website, which is justicegrants.usdoj.gov. The Just Grants deadline for this Second Chance Act Training and Technical Assistance Program is August 1, 2023 at 8:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So again, we hope that everyone will take the time to look at some of the resources, including the How to Apply section in the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide. A link is provided here as well as in the solicitation, and see the DOJ Application Submission Checklist. Again, the link is provided here, but that's also listed in the solicitation. All right. I believe I've taken it back to you, Meg.
Yes, thanks, Andre. And I'm going to go through a few of the resources that are available to you to assist you during the application process, and I think will be particularly relevant given the polling results where some of you may have more or less experience submitting applications to OJP. So this first slide is a resource guide that walks you through the basics of submitting an application for OJP funding, goes through each element of the application, application attachments, financial information, award administration information, designed to take some of the stress out of the application process. So, and the link is on the slide. Andre already mentioned, and is flagged again on this slide, the importance of having current registration with System for Award Management, or SAM. Next slide. To submit your application, as already mentioned, and also to manage your awards, you need to be familiar with the Just Grants system. So the link on this slide directs you to Just Grants and the range of resources, training, FAQs, and just an opportunity to request user support that is offered by Just Grants administrators. Next slide. In addition to these online resources, we continue to offer the ability to call or email for technical support for both systems that you're going to need to access as part of submitting an application. Grants.gov, which you will use to, as Andre mentioned, register as an applicant by submitting the application for federal assistance, or SF424, and the SFLLL. You must do this, as Andre already mentioned, before the deadline, and an applicant that fails to submit in grants.gov won't be able to submit in Just Grants. So it's really important to adhere to that deadline. And then Just Grants, which is the system you'll use to submit your application for funding, which also must be done by the deadline to be considered for funding. Next slide. And if you're not already a subscriber, please stay connected to OJP and BJA by subscribing to these different opportunities as reflected on the slide, and including Just Info or JP News releases and the Just Grants newsletter, as well as the DOJ email updates. And that will ensure you receive any updates on this solicitation and all other news that we release. Next slide. And do stay connected to us through social media, these different outlets. Again, the links are on the slide, which you will have access to. And we're hoping that we will have been able to answer many of your questions on this webinar today. But if you have questions that come up, please reach out to the OJP Response Center, and the information is here on the slide. Next slide. And most importantly, please remember that applications, as Andre flagged, and I'm trying to reinforce here, must be submitted using a two-step process, each with their own deadline, both through grants.gov and Just Grants. And then again, note that the submission deadline, as Andre already mentioned, is now 8:59 p.m. Eastern Time and no longer 11:59. And as always, please read the solicitation document carefully for any additional guidance. I am going to move into our next slide, which is kind of just a summary slide of a quick guide on how to get support related to grants.gov, just grants, and to ask solicitation-related questions at the OJP response center. Next slide, I'm going to pass it over to Heather, although I just see that there's a flag to, I think, raise your hand if you have any questions.
Yes,
we
do
are
apologize.
experiencing some, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we do apologize for the technical glitch with the chat and Q&A functions. If you do want to raise your hand, we can unmute your line and to ask the question verbally. I do see somebody just submitted a question in the chat, so maybe it's resolved itself. But Heather, if you see that question, I don't know if you could see that question.
Yep, I got it. So we've got one question in. Before I get to that, I do just want to flag one thing. We have made a correction to the solicitation. There was a note in there about eligibility that says for profits, but not small businesses. That has been changed. So if you go to the BJA website and you look at funding opportunities and locate this solicitation now, you will see that small businesses are in fact eligible. They are not excluded. All right, so first question that I can see is, for a public higher ed institution, do the possible grantees need to be open to the public, or can they be focused only on individuals tied to the institution? So I could see the question going one of two ways. I'm going to try to answer it, but to the individual who asked, if I don't, please put a follow-up question in there. I would like to get this addressed for you. So for this solicitation, public institutions of higher education are eligible applicants to be TA providers to the grantees who will apply under separate solicitations. So I'm not sure if your question is asking whether what you mean by grantee, I guess, is where I'm getting a little confused. So grantees can apply, grantees who would apply under other solicitations are applying to deliver programs and services or enhance access to programs and services for people who are reentering their communities from prisons and jails. Those individuals may or may not be enrolled in institutions of higher education. The individuals tied to the institution, that would be the link, but if you're talking about applying to be a TA provider, the TA provider under this solicitation will be delivering assistance to guide the implementation of the programs and services that are being stood up by those grantees. So if you kind of think about it like in tiers, there are grants that will go out to state, local, tribal, and community-based nonprofit organizations to serve individuals coming out of prisons and jails. Sometimes those individuals have links to institutions of higher education. For this solicitation, the selected providers will work with those grantees, and if somebody who applies to the solicitation is associated with an institution of higher ed, the delivery you will do is not necessarily to people who are enrolled in your institution. This solicitation is to deliver support to those grantees selected under other solicitations. So it's more that you're delivering to those whom BJA selected, not to individuals that you would select. If you cannot see the chat icon, please go ahead and raise your hand and we can unmute your line to ask any questions. Thank you for bearing with us with these technical difficulties. We'll give it another couple of moments. And then, of course, as you can see that Meg noted, on your screen are the important contacts for questions. So there are questions about technical items, and then there are places to ask questions about programmatic requirements. Those of us on this call are here to answer any questions you have right now, but we will not be able to field individual questions after this, as everybody who is a potential applicant has to have equal access to questions and answers, so they must be either asked in a public forum like this webinar or tracked through one of these response centers. So please don't be shy. Let's give it one more minute for questions, and if we don't see any hands, then we will close out for today. All right, well with that, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to my team and colleagues at BJA. This was a lot to deliver today. We hope y'all enjoyed listening in and that you're going to apply for one or more categories of this. Many thanks to the team at Leidos, to Daryl and Tammy for putting on the technical aspects of this webinar, and to our colleague Sarah Sullivan behind the scenes. Thank you all.